By 2027, every school will have to follow standard disciplinary measures such as detention and conduct grade adjustment for different types of misconduct. But the measure that divided parents, teachers, and parliamentarians was that bullies can get up to 3 strokes of the cane. But caning in school is not new, so why were there so many people upset that school bullies will be caned? Should we even cane school bullies at all? Hi guys, I'm Natasha and welcome to another episode of The Usual Place, the podcast where we have real conversations about the headlines. Now, to share this perspective on the issue of caning bullies, I have my colleague and education reporter, Elisha Tushara, who has been covering school bullying over the past couple of years. And Elisha, you are also a mom to 2 kids, and one of them is a primary school going kid, right?
Yes.
And you were also a secondary school teacher for almost 13 years.
Yes.
Yes. Welcome back to the show because you've been on to talk about something else before, but now we're going to talk about school bullying and caning. But let me introduce the other guest first, the Chief Executive Officer of the Singapore Children's Society, Boon. And Boon, you recently wrote a commentary for the Straits Times where you highlighted that the public discourse has unfortunately focused narrowly on the disciplinary measures instead of the bigger picture of how we can better support children who are bullied and create safe spaces for children to report bullying. But I want to start the conversation off where everybody's fixated, which is caning bullies. Now, Elisha, as a former teacher looking at the new standardized disciplinary measures, what do you think about caning in schools? From your experience, was it effective among students when students were, directed to be caned? Was it effective in changing their behaviour?
So it really depended on the student. I mean, you cannot guarantee a change of behaviour just by caning alone. So I think for students where this was really a one-off thing, it's not in their nature, to commit whatever kind of misbehaviour, then yes, if they're not caned at home especially, and this is the first time they're experiencing such a thing, it could be embarrassing. It could instill some sort of fear that, these are the consequences, especially if they get older. What happens if they go to jail and they get caning there. So yes, probably it could help. But then there are students who are already very desensitized to caning, being hit. And then if you cane them, I mean, sad to say, oftentimes I've seen students wear it like a badge of honor. They come back to class and like, hey, I kena cane. Not so bad lah.
Okay, but why are they desensitized to being caned? Does it happen at home or they're just trying to act tough? Or
it could be both. Or either or. So it could be that their parents cane them at home from young, so they're already used to it. Or they just don't want to show it as a sign of weakness in front of their friends who know that they're being caned. So they don't want to admit that it hurt. Yeah.
So in general, in schools, in the schools that you've worked at, what is the thing about caning? In general, does the school population say, oh, okay, I'm scared of it? Or is it just like a select few? It's like, hey, cane me. It's fine if you get caned. What's the overall sentiment? Do the kids agree with this treatment of people who have misconduct, who have done badly in school or whatever?
I think whether or not they fear it, I don't think it's standard across. It really depends on the student. But I think if it gets to the level of caning, then students understand that you got this because it's very serious. Yeah, so it's gone to that level already. Yeah, but I don't think people fear it as much. And in my experience, a lot of schools tend not to reach for caning. They prefer to focus on restorative practices where possible.
Okay, so we'll get into this restorative practice, or what they call restorative justice. Okay, so we'll get into it in a bit. But I want to mention what happened in Parliament last week. So MPs asked questions about the use of caning to address school bullying. So basically what's new here is that the new disciplinary framework that will be rolled out to schools next year, basically school bullies, they can actually be caned. So previously, schools had some discretion to decide how bullies were punished. Now, what I want to know is, in this age of gentle parenting, seems to be what younger parents favor, like gentle parenting. Why do you think Singapore is doubling down on corporal punishment? Maybe, Boon, I can get you to weigh in here.
Well, maybe there is also maybe some hope that some problems can be fixed very quickly. So I think we know that maybe corporal punishment can definitely bring about short-term compliance very quickly, and the behaviour could stop. I think what we don't know is whether corporal punishment could really be effective in bringing about long-term changes. What Elisha said just now about, do the children actually learn from being caned? What lessons did they take away? And are they therefore incentivized and motivated to change their behavior moving forward? Do they even know how to change their behavior? So I don't think corporal punishment alone is really going to solve the problem.
Because when you're trying to rehabilitate a bully, you want them to understand what bullying
Yes.
feels like. So in that sense, how does caning help them understand what bullying feels like, right?
Yeah.
Is this what some parents who oppose caning say, that this is just violence begetting violence?
Well, it depends on the parents lah. Some parents believe in caning. So,
Oh, I think in terms of like, some people do see this as you're tackling violence with violence, so that's not the right way to do it. But also there is this adage that that we know, right? This proverb that we know: if we spare the rod, we spoil the child. You know, how come that maybe doesn't have relevance today? You think? I'm going to open it up to both of you, because as parents, you know, how do you reconcile with disciplining your kid and using the right methods? Maybe Elisha, you can tell us first.
so when I was growing up, I was never caned. But my husband, I think he got it almost like every other day. So, you know, when we are parenting our children, like especially my son who's a bit older, we have differences, you know, with regards to whether or not you should be hard with caning, or whether or not you should try, you know, talking to them or trying other methods. But it's about finding that balance lah. You know, so...
Wait, are you okay if your husband canes your kids? Do they get caned?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm not okay with it. But sometimes I understand why he does it. And as long as it doesn't go too far, and it's not happening so frequently, it's a very, very rare occurrence, and it hasn't happened in a very long time. But I think the first time it happened, I was a little bit shocked. And we had to have a conversation about why did you think that was appropriate. And I got to understand that actually he grew up like that. You know, and my husband turned out fine. You know, he doesn't have any emotional scars or anything. And I think he also realizes that I'm not so comfortable with it. So he stopped doing it. And after that, it was just about really having conversations about, you know, how do we want to correct our child's misbehaviour in ways that are acceptable to both of us. But if the school were to cane my child, I don't know.
Would you have a problem?
Yes, I think I have a very big problem with it. Yeah, because it's not something that I'm comfortable doing. And I think no matter the misbehaviour, I don't know if I'll be happy if the school, you know, cane my child, yeah.
Boon, you're nodding. Tell me.
I mean, what is just shared, it also came up in our own research on the use of physical discipline in families. Actually, a lot of parents who we interviewed said, you know, that was like the only method that they knew, because they were also caned growing up. So when they have children, that seems like the most, the only method that they're aware. But actually, to discipline a child is to teach a child. So I think we firmly believe that actually we want the lessons to be internalized. Do we really see the change happening because the child is just trying to avoid the punishment? Do they therefore get smarter and smarter at doing the wrong thing, but be smarter at not getting caught? And is that what we want to teach the child to do?
Yeah. I mean, Elisha, I'm sure you have had interesting stories of how kids try to avoid caning or getting the worst of the whack in schools.
So you hear whispers in the classroom. Yeah, so sometimes if they know they're going to be caned, you know, they'll go to the toilet and they'll pad themselves up with tissue paper. And I think I heard someone say they'll wear like 3 layers of underwear. So they get creative lah.
Yeah, I mean, that's like some creative thinking right there, but for the wrong thing lah. But
No, but honestly, okay, if you compare caning, let's say in prison, to caning in schools, I mean, when you think about caning in prisons, it's so difficult to see and so shocking, because, you know, they have to take off their pants, take off their underwear, and they use like a proper cane, and it tears the skin and it leaves marks. But that's not what's happening in schools, you know. And some students might say it just stung a little bit. Some students may cry because they've never had, you know, been caned before. And for some students, they just try their best not to show that it affects them in any way. So, yeah, so students get creative.
Yeah.
And I think older students, sometimes they don't want to show how much it affects them. Yeah.
I mean, we did speak to some other teachers as well who actually welcomed this move to have caning for school bullies, because there are some students who are recalcitrant offenders and they're quite bad, you know, quite bad offences. And one teacher said pain and fear can be a very powerful disincentive to deter such behaviour, and said that teachers also have a responsibility to keep the school community safe. So this is the wider community, it's not just focused on the bully, right? What do you both think of that? Maybe, Boon, you can tell us first.
I think there are many ways to communicate that some behaviors are unacceptable. I don't think there's only one method of doing it. Firm consequences can be firm. They can be meaningful as well. So if someone has done something wrong, maybe it's more important to help that person see how and what harm they have caused and how can they make good and repair the harm that they have done. And if a clear message is being sent to the whole school community, not just maybe a small group of affected students, I think that can go a long way in changing the whole environment and making people more aware of the impact of their actions.
Elisha, thoughts on what teachers are saying about the move, especially those who welcome it? You're on the fence.
Yeah, because I think especially when it comes to like recalcitrant offenders, right? I think there's a lot happening in the background and at home and in their personal lives that needs to be tackled, which I think caning will not solve. It might be a temporary deterrent, like they get caned, and they feel the sting, they don't want it to happen again. But you're not solving things that they're dealing with at home or in their personal lives or in their social circle. So there's a lot of work to be done, I think, on that front about really understanding why did they do this. How can we help them? What changes need to be done?
So can I chime in on that? Because I think we hear people say, that bullies, people who bully, children who bully have an unmet need. Actually, that really comes out as well when we interact with the child who has been engaging in bullying, when we speak to them a bit more and find out what's happening in their families and their lives. Actually, the behaviors they're exhibiting could really be their way of coping with the situation. So for instance, if someone finds that he hasn't been successful in making friends, but if he teases someone else and he gets the laughs, he's being seen as the cool kid, maybe that's how he thinks that, hey, that's how I make friends in future, because I can be popular. If someone has been bullied before and they think that I better be stronger next time so that I don't get bullied, it's better for me to bully someone than to be bullied. Actually, those behaviors they exhibit could just be a very inappropriate response to the problem that they're facing. And what they don't have is the appropriate skills and knowledge on how do I behave in certain social situations. So we kind of assume that children will know how to behave the right way, but maybe we can't make that assumption anymore.
So is it about, so this, what you're talking about is how kids become bullies. In
a way. And then I think we were chatting just now. I think we also wanted to refrain from calling a child a bully. We prefer to say that a child might be engaging in a bullying behavior, only because we are describing the behavior that they do. That's not an identity that we want the child to be associated with. So so I think particularly if we're talking about someone who repeatedly demonstrates the wrong behavior, actually it's really worthwhile us understanding a bit deeper what's going on in that child's life. Yeah, so beyond that short-term compliance, could the child be undergoing some difficulties at home? Have they also been affected in a certain way and that was never addressed with them? So I think all the more for recalcitrant behavior, we should look into the root cause.
So, speaking about language, we don't use the term bully for children who have harmed other children. Then, I feel like we shouldn't call the other party victims either. So how do we reframe the language around this that helps both parties?
Yeah. So we typically, refer to a child who has experienced bullying. We talk about children who have engaged in bullying behaviors, because we also believe in the potential of the child to change. Just because I've done it once before, it's not fair for me to be labeled a bully for the rest of my school-going years and all that. And I think we deeply believe in the potential of the child to change, to learn. If they are given the right skills, they're given the opportunities to demonstrate what changes could look like. Actually, I think that's not a fixed identity, that one thing that they've done before. Yeah.
So we're here because MOE's been looking into it, because the number of bullying cases, I guess, seems to be going up in over the past couple of years. And MOE says that it also expects the Ministry of Education, MOE, has said that it also expects the number of online bullying cases to go up, just because kids have so much more access to online spaces and things like that. What's driving that, Elisha? When you see kids or your own kids and Boon, your own kids, how do they get involved with bullying?
So online, it can take various forms lah. So what I've experienced when I was a teacher is like you take a picture, of a schoolmate, and then you turn that into like some sort of sticker, like a very unflattering picture, with a very mean caption, and then you send it around. Then the person finds out that this sticker exists, they feel upset. Or if not, you put up posts about them on Instagram and you get people to like it and to comment and then, gain traction. So bullying online takes various shapes and forms. And the fact that it can be spread to so many people, I think that's what makes it so terrible nowadays. Because in my time, if you bully someone, you just say it in their face and it's over. But now it stays online. Yeah.
Women?
So we still see different forms of bullying. So we see relational bullying, we see verbal bullying. Physical bullying still takes place, I think, in school settings. I think we don't have the stats, but on school bullying in general. But over our Think Girlfriend helpline and chat line, we see about 150 chats on average a year related to bullying. So these are from children who could have experienced bullying or they have seen someone experiencing bullying and they just want to really know what they can do to help their friends as well. So maybe there is also an increasing awareness that it's okay to talk about such things. And I hope that with this whole conversation, actually we are encouraging children to step forward, to speak up. And it doesn't have to be such a bad problem before you say that, I've experienced hurt. It's okay. It's, if you've experienced hurt, it's real. Let's talk about it.
And actually, when you wrote in your commentary that from data gleaned from Think Girlfriend, most children don't actually want their bully to be punished.
Yes.
But just for some context, Think Girlfriend is a helpline, right?
Yes.
An online chat service for primary school age children. So they got to be under 13 to call the helpline.
Yeah, so we generally go to primary schools and we share with them the helpline. But if someone older than 13 calls us, we speak to them as well.
Okay. Yeah, right. So you actually mentioned Think Girlfriend earlier, but I want to know, basically, how do they want a bully to be dealt with? Because what you wrote in your commentary is actually they want a listening ear or to figure out how to restore fractured friendships or have a friend stand up for them. Did that surprise you?
Yeah, I think we say children are growing up, but sometimes there's a lot of wisdom in what they say. And they know, right? Because in school, they still have to learn to get along with the child who maybe have bullied them in the past. They're still going to be classmates, going to recess together, going to PE together. So they're really asking us for very practical tips on how do I get along with this person? How do I move on from the incident? And I think it speaks to the fact that they're in school every day, and I think we should address those needs actually. So it kind of surprised us a little, and I think we are, but we're happy to see that actually they believe that, just because someone has done something to me in the past doesn't mean that we can't be friends anymore. How do we rebuild their relationship? So I think that's very encouraging. Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting to me because actually I want to hear from Elisha about the flip side of dealing with parents, So the children's reaction surprised me, but I'm also curious about the reactions from parents that you've interacted with who've had their kids bullied. Because as we discussed, if it was my kid who was getting bullied, I'd be like, see you outside. We'll settle this outside. We will the hands will be thrown. Okay, but what were some of the reactions that you got from parents when they found out that their kids were bullied?
So the most common thing we got was any teacher present? So especially if it happened in school, right? Like, where did this happen? How come, was there a teacher present? Did anybody intervene? And I think at the end of the day, what parents want is assurance that the bullying will stop and that it won't happen again. It won't be like repetitive behaviour. Yeah, so I mean, in my experience, most parents don't want the bully to be caned or, for there to be some sort of justice, but they just want to ensure that it stops and that their child can, return to school safely. Yeah.
Boon, how do you think parents should react when they find out that their children have been bullied?
I think it's very natural for parents to feel an ache, maybe, when they feel an ache to say, why is my child going through all this? How can I stop the problem right away? How can I, seek justice for my child? I think that might be very naturally our first reaction. But I think it really will help to take a pause and maybe ask the child, by saying all this to me, what would you like me to do for you? what would you like me to do with you? Do you want me to go to the school and find that child, or would you like me to walk you through some steps that maybe you can take? And do you feel safe? Do you feel that, are you under threat? Of course, if there are any safety issues, we should address that first. But I think we should also work with the child and listen to them. If they feel that they can manage the problem on their own, it's not the time yet to go and go and speak to any teacher. Maybe we could also work with the child on that. So regular check-in on how the situation has been progressing. And if it feels like, hey, actually they have been able to maybe sort out some matters on their own and things have taken a turn for the better, then maybe parents can sort of refrain from wanting to jump in at the very first instance to say, let me fix the problem.
So, we're talking about parents now, and I'll come back to the role what role they should play before these incidents actually get sparked off, right? But the way y'all are advocating for dealing with bullying in school is this thing about restorative justice, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, and it has come up frequently in recent conversations, right? Boon, maybe you can explain what this means to people who are not familiar with it.
So I think the difference is when in a restorative approach, we are trying to repair the harm that has been done, the hurt that has been done. So in a very practical, just to give a practical example, we could be talking about a group facilitated conversation where maybe the teacher or facilitator bring the child who has experienced bullying, who has bullied somebody, maybe even other children who have witnessed the incidents, bring them together and give the space and the chance for everyone to speak what's on their mind, acknowledge the hurt that has taken place, and then maybe work out together with the group actually what steps can be taken to prevent such actions or such behavior from happening again in the future. So it gives space for everyone to be acknowledged. Even the child who has engaged in bullying gets the chance to also say, how did they feel about it, why did they do it, and what commitment would they make to avoid doing the same thing in future. I think depending on the situation, it might also be appropriate to bring parents into the picture as well, to engage parents in similar kind of conversations. So if your child has been bullying somebody, what do you as a parent think you can do to help your child correct those behaviors and avoid doing the same thing in the future? I think the restorative approach is really about giving time and space to everyone to come together and to make good the situation that has already happened, rather than to, put in a punishment or a penalty, something like that.
So I'm assuming here teachers would be at the forefront of leading these things, right? And Elisha, hearing about what steps needs to be taken, would it be extra work for teachers who are already stretched in context of they already have to teach the class, now they have to do CCA, and then now they have to do this as well?
So just on that front, I think one of the things that I appreciated from this bullying review was that the ministry announced that they were going to revamp the way bullying was taught in the CC syllabus. So I actually got a chance to observe an upper primary class during a CC lesson.
Okay, hold on. What is CCE? This is
Character and Citizenship Education. So last time it used to be called Civics and Moral Education lah. Yeah. So what they have done is they have, with regards to bullying, they are trying to teach this topic in a more engaging way, where it's not so much frontal teaching. So it's not just students, listening to the teacher explain what bullying is, what are the various forms of bullying and what are the consequences. But they get the students to engage in role play. So the students, will be in scenarios where they imagine themselves being the bully, or they imagine themselves being bullied, or as the bystander, to understand, why these kind of behaviors are very harmful. And hopefully that will help to shape their perception of why they shouldn't engage in bullying as they grow older. So I find that this is very useful, because a lot of times if students haven't experienced bullying, and when they see it happening in front of them, they don't know what to do. Then they end up becoming bystanders. They don't step in to help. Or if a person who bullies doesn't understand what it feels to be bullied, then, all the more they might continue the behavior. So I felt this shift was very good. That from upper primary, students get to do role playing to understand. Yeah.
Did you talk to some of the kids in these classes?
Yes, I did.
What were some of the things that they said post-class?
So I remember one child told me that after going through the lesson and being a part of the role play, they feel that now if bullying were to ever happen in front of them, they'd have more confidence about what to do and how to step in, because part of the role play involved them doing something to stop the bullying. So it's like they've had practice, sort of. Yeah, so they won't be so blur like the next time it happens. Yeah, or if not, if they don't have the confidence to, intervene at that moment, maybe later on they might go to the person who experienced bullying and, console them, ask them how they can be of help. Yeah, so I think this is a step in the right direction.
It's teaching them a lot of empathy through
Yes.
role playing.
And perspective taking.
Right.
Yeah.
Boon, do you agree with this approach?
Yeah, I think equipping children with skills is definitely helpful. I think our experience from running some of our bully-free programs in school have also been that actually the knowledge of the child, knowledge of children in identifying bullying situations, knowing how to respond, actually that knowledge has improved over time, over years. But what we realized was actually the reaction of the parents or the educators when a child brings up something. Actually, that's also a very important part for us to address, and that's why in our current thinking, the next few projects that we will be doing with schools, actually we want to find an opportunity to engage parents and educators as well, together with the children. Yeah, so I think it can be a very collaborative approach with the whole school. And I think, MOE in the announcements have also said that they want to give more resources to the schools, and they encourage schools to work closer with, community agencies that they can partner with. So I think if a teacher is facilitating that conversation for the first time, it can be quite intimidating, and you need a lot of tact and skills, right? How to get everyone to feel safe enough, but perhaps there could be also other people, other professions that we could bring in to help facilitate that conversation. People could learn also how to do it better. So it need not fall on the shoulders of teachers alone, I think.
The one thing that I'm uncomfortable with this conversation about bullying in schools is that there's a lot of conversation about rehabilitating bullies. But is there a sense that we're kind of leaving out the victim's sense of justice? I mean, I wish I heard more about how we can help victims for all people who have, or kids who have been affected by bullies, right? But how can schools and parents actually address that? I mean, do you agree with me that we could talk more about how to help kids who have been bullied? Or is it just my sensing? Or do we need to have more material about that?
I think one of the issues is it's not evenly applied across schools. Because, like I say, it depends on the situation, how they were bullied, what they went through, what is their, what they experience at home, what's their social circle like. So when dealing with people who have experienced bullying, I think one of the most important things is just regular check-ins and helping them feel safe, and not losing trust in the school system that, this is the place they have to go to every weekday, and that the teachers and the school cannot keep them safe from bullies. So for me, I feel that's the most important part, to let them know that we are aware, we take your safety very seriously, and we're going to do our best to ensure this doesn't happen. And the most important way to do that is to help the bully reform. Yeah, so that they don't repeat this behaviour.
Okay, fair point. Women?
Yeah, so I also think maybe we can listen to the child. So depending on what the child say would help them the most. If it's to repair some of the relationships that have been damaged, can the child who initiated, certain exclusion of people be the one to bring the child back into that social circle so that they can be friends again? So maybe we just have to give, it definitely takes time to hear from each child, actually, how have you been affected and what can we do for you? But I don't think there's like one thing or a few things that we can do. Time and space for the child to also process what's happened. I think empowerment is also one thing we speak about. Can we let the child also take some ownership and say, we will support you, we can stand at the side, you decide how you want to handle the situation, we'll come in when support is given. I think giving the child the voice and letting them know that what they say matters to adults, we will take their views into consideration, can be very empowering as well. That's why you said, right, that we shouldn't just call someone who has experienced bullying a victim. No, they've just experienced it. They will cope with it. They will be supported to walk out of the incident. I think we can do a lot more to equip the child.
The other group that I think should be featured more in this conversation is parents. An MOE directive to parents is that they should engage the school to work things out when their kids are bullies or are being bullied, right? basically let the school handle the situation between the students, right? How can parents actually come in before things escalate? Because I know that things like there are parent chat groups or they talk to their kids, but how will they actually figure out if their kid is bullying someone else or being bullied in school? Is it possible?
I've seen it done in very unproductive ways. So I've been a part of parent chat groups in primary school, and some parents just want to like air it out in the parent chat group, like, a parent of this student, please contact me, and then they will put up screenshots of like, what happened. Right. I didn't really think that's very productive because you're like naming and shaming the child, and you don't want to make it a point for like every parent in the chat group to know.
And people have no
Yeah.
context, because if I see this message of like, oh, what happened, then that sets off other people because they're like, oh, what happened, and they start this like rumor thread, which may not even be true.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that this kind of thing, if you feel like your child is being bullied and you know who the bully is, then you handle it with the parent directly, if you want to do that. But some parents, do these kind of things where they just want like everybody to know and they want to name and shame. I mean, I think we've seen parents take this like to Instagram and TikTok, and I don't think that's very helpful. Yeah, so I understand why, schools say, please let us handle it, go through us instead of dealing with it yourself. Because, of course, when your kid is getting bullied, you can get very emotional. And when you're emotional, you may not, think about the best way to do things.
Do you
Yeah.
think that parental involvement actually sometimes unnecessarily escalates the incident?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think, like Boon said, then your voice takes over your child's voice, where you're just thinking about how you feel about it and what kind of justice you want, but you're not really, engaging the child who has experienced bullying to, ask them, how do you want us to go about this? Like, what do you want out of this? And who knows, the child may be more embarrassed that the parent is making a big deal of it in school. Yeah.
So I want to ask women to take us home with this, but how do we better equip parents to handle situation like this where their kids are either being bullied or they are the bully?
So I think maybe listening to the child could be the first step, and helping the child process what's happened. I think we have to not rush to make a decision or recommendation. We also can try to give teachers some space and some time. I think it's true that teachers need time to investigate, speak to maybe all the students who have been involved. And I think regular check-ins with the teachers can help. I think this is where, that homeschool partnership really comes in, that we see parents as part of the solution. I think both parties, even schools can also make a more proactive approach. I think maybe even for the parent whose child is engaged in bullying, do we just assume that the parent, is just all out to like defend themselves, and maybe they also want to see how they can help their child improve, right? And so can we bring them into this conversation? I think there are ways. So for us, sometimes we receive requests to go in to speak to parents just to share some tips and maybe some ways in which you can get your child to even open up. So if you ask your child, oh, have you been bullied? Then maybe that conversation will end there. It's a yes/no question. But if you bring up this topic in a different way, you could bring up an instance of what you've read, what you've seen, and you encourage the child to speak about it. So even without the child directly saying things, so maybe you could get a glimpse into the child's life, and also hear about how your child would respond if they were to meet a situation like this. So you don't only have to. So it's not only when something has happened that you speak to the child about it. So encouraging, I think, building that trust and connection with your child is the first step in many things we try to do. So if your child feels safe talking to you, they know they can trust you. If they tell you, don't go and talk to my teacher, and you will respect that, then your child will be more encouraged to come forward to you next time if they really meet a problem. So this foundation, I think, this relationship building can start anytime. You don't have to wait for something bad to happen.
So I hear you, like parents really got to be involved to prevent their kid from being bullied or, being bullies, right? Yeah. Okay, for now, I will stand down. Okay, thank you both for being here today. And that's it from The Usual Place. Now, if you're watching us on YouTube, do subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you won't miss new episodes of the podcast. If you have thoughts on what we just discussed, do drop a comment on YouTube or talk to me on Instagram at The Usual Place Podcast. I'll see you next Thursday.